So while Adam Silver is busy figuring out the most illogical way to hand out the regular season awards, and Jason White Chocolate Williams is out there dropping another terrible take about Victor Wembanyama, proving once again that long-term drug use really does lead to some serious brain damage. Maybe it's time we talk about the Spurs' chances in the NBA playoffs. The playoffs are right around the corner, and we actually already know San Antonio's first opponent, which is going to be Portland. But I don't really want to focus just on that first round series against the Blazers, or even on who the Spurs might face in the second round, assuming they get past Portland, which I honestly have no doubt they will. No, what I want to talk about today is the team's broader outlook, and also address this lazy take that I've seen way too many times from Spurs haters online, which is that San Antonio doesn't have any playoff experience, and that's going to be the reason they fail, possibly even in the first round. The funny part is that in the first round, the Spurs are playing against Portland, a team that also has zero playoff experience except for that one play-in game earlier this week. But somehow this argument only gets used against San Antonio, and not against any other team that's in the same situation. Another thing these kinds of fans love to do is compare this year's Spurs to last year's Houston Rockets, because there are actually quite a few similarities on the surface. Both are young Texas teams, both finished second in the West, both made the playoffs after spending several years at the bottom of the league. As you probably remember, Houston got knocked out in the first round last year when a more experienced Golden State team beat Udoka's guys in 7 games, after which the Warriors got swept by Minnesota in the semifinals without putting up much of a fight. At first glance, that logic seems to hold up, and maybe you'd think that take is worth listening to.
What the fuck is this?
But actually, it's complete BS, because that comparison is based on nothing but the most surface-level facts that don't really tell you much about either team. First of all, the 2025 Rockets and the 2026 Spurs are two completely different teams, and the biggest difference is the level of basketball they're playing. Yes, Houston finished second in the West thanks to a strong run at the end of the regular season, but they were absolutely not better than Denver, Minnesota, or even the 2 LA teams that year. Oklahoma City finished first and was in a league of their own with 68 wins, but the teams from 2nd to 8th place were separated by just 4 wins total, meaning it was a big group of roughly equal teams, and in the end the Rockets lost in the first round, which for a second seed team isn't exactly a great look. Now let's look at the standings this season. Oklahoma City is first again, but the gap isn't nearly as big as it was last year, and the Spurs, who are sitting in second, are only 2 wins behind the Thunder while leading the 3rd place team by a full 8 wins. 62 wins is a really impressive result, one of the best in franchise history. In fact, it matches the 3rd best record the Spurs have ever posted, meaning that even the prime Spurs from the beautiful game era didn't beat this number very often. So why is it wrong to compare the Spurs situation to the Rockets situation? Because the current Spurs are simply a much stronger team than most young teams usually are when they make their first playoff appearance. Normally, young teams develop more gradually and in smaller steps, but the Spurs just burst into the top tier of the NBA and posted what is essentially a record-breaking jump in wins, from 34 last season to 62 this season. These Spurs are simply too good for us to measure them by the same general rules that apply to other young teams, because the only things that really matter in basketball are the level of play, the talent, and the skill. And this team has all of that in a way that Houston didn't last year. I just can't buy into all this experience nonsense. Instead of bringing up examples of other teams from around the league, let's just look at the Spurs' own history and see how far playoff experience actually got them in some of those years. The 2009 Spurs had all the experience you could ask for, and they still got blown out by Dallas in the first round. The 2010 Spurs had all that same experience and got swept by the Suns in 4 games. The 2011 Spurs had all the experience and got embarrassed by the Grizzlies in the first round. The 2012 Spurs had all the experience and lost to a young Oklahoma City team that didn't have nearly as much postseason experience, simply because the Thunder were the better team at that moment. I could keep going with more examples, but you get the point. At the end of the day, you're either the better basketball team or you're not, And sometimes there's just a very fine line between winning and losing a series where one shot here or one bounce there decides everything. The experience card is an excuse, and it's a narrative that gets way more attention than it deserves. Because you can have all the experience in the world, but still come up short if you don't have enough talent, or enough luck, or if injuries start piling up at the wrong time. Playoff experience is just one piece of the puzzle, and for a team to actually win a championship, a whole bunch of those pieces need to fall into place, not just that one. Does experience matter? Of course it does, no question about it. But is it the single most important factor that decides everything? I really don't think so. Don't get me wrong here, I'm not saying that the Spurs are definitely going to win the championship or even make it to the conference finals or the NBA finals. I'm going to be cheering for them and hoping for the best, but if I'm looking at this from a rational perspective, I'm not ready to bet that any of those things will actually happen. Even though the team has had a fantastic season, especially the last part of it starting around the All-Star break, there are still some weaknesses in their game that make me wonder how things will play out when the pressure ramps up. How is De'Aaron Fox going to perform when every possession matters more than it did in the regular season? How many minutes can Wemby actually give the Spurs in a playoff setting? And is San Antonio's entire defense too dependent on him being on the floor? Are the shooters going to stay as consistent from deep as they've been over the last 2 months? Or will they go cold at the worst possible time? There are so many questions, and each one of them could lead to a completely different outcome for this team, but honestly, that's exactly why we love this game. Because of how unpredictable and complicated it is. And that's why I don't want to reduce the conversation about the Spurs' chances to just one boring, lazy narrative about them not having enough experience. We won't have to wait much longer to start getting answers to these and plenty of other questions, because the first game against Portland gonna happening today in a few hours. Don't miss it.